Hi again, everybody. This is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. I'm Jamie Allison, and this is the destination for high performers. We talk to people from different genres, different niches, and different backgrounds to find out some of the things that they're doing that we can translate into our lives. So we've talked to athletes, we talked to CEOs, we talked to entrepreneurs, and people that are just doing really cool things in their area of expertise, and really bring those back to you, the listener. And today I know that we have somebody that you're going to take a lot away from. Really happy to have her today. Just before we jump into that, a couple of things that we have to do is obviously, if you're looking for a publication or a resource for fitness, for wellness, nutrition, you need to check out Impact Magazine. Their current issue is out right now, and it actually features Mark McMorris, snowboarder. So really cool to check that out. You can find them on Instagram, or you can just go to www.impactmagazine.ca. Epitome HR is also a supporter of the podcast as well, and they bring innovative solutions to address some of the unique human resources challenges you might be having, especially right now. They're a full-service boutique consulting company that helps transform your organization by putting the people practices and the employee brand front and center for your organization. So if that's something that you're interested in looking at, go to www.epitomehr.com. They also have an assessment on there if you want to take a look yourself to see if it makes sense that that you get some help from that area as well. And then the last thing as well is if you're making some travel plans, and especially for those people, I know that we're kind of in that still lockdown phase, and it kind of comes in and out of that. But if you're making plans moving forward, one thing to check out is the Wakefield Inn and Spa. They're located on the edge of the Gatineau Forest, so not too far from Ottawa, and definitely a place to enjoy the relaxation part. Or there's a whole bunch of activities right there if you've ever been in the Gatineau area. There's fat biking, there's cross-country skiing, there's hiking, all of those things just literally steps from the Wakefield Inn. So check that out either again on Instagram, or go to www.wakefieldmill.com and check it out so that you can make some plans. And so after all that stuff that we're going through, again, really happy to have Lindsay Webster here with us today. She is one of the most recognizable and highly decorated OCR athletes in the world. She is a two-time Spartan Race World Champion and has never missed a podium in 22 career USNS races. She has 13 career wins. And in 2019 at Lake Tahoe World Championships, she actually gutted her way to second place, but did that with a broken foot, I understand. So we'll maybe talk about that a little bit too. But recently she was a featured athlete on the first Spartan Games, which is where they brought a cross-section of athletes from a whole bunch of different genres. So from triathletes to NFL players to marathoners, all those things, put them all together and tested their overall fitness in a bunch of different events that are outside of their comfort zones. And Lindsay came out on top in that as well. She's married to the top male athlete that came out on top on the male side as well, Ryan Atkins, and we've spoken to him before. And so this is a real pleasure, because I know that we've been hoping to get Lindsay on for a little while, and we really appreciate it, because I know we've got her in the middle of lockdown, so it's a little bit easier, because I know you're in the middle of a snowstorm as well, Lindsay. So thanks for jumping on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. And also, I love Impact Magazine, and I love Wakefield Mill. And if anybody goes to Wakefield Mill, make sure you hit up Chelsea Bakery.
There. See all the inside tips. I didn't know that.
Oh, no? Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, Chelsea Bakery, Ryan introduced me to, because he grew up in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's this little quaint town called Chelsea, and it has like one of the best bakeries I've ever been to.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, that's good for everyone to know, because yeah, like you guys, I think are in Quebec right now. So, where Wakefield is, you've been spending a lot of time, it sounds like, probably training outdoors. How has that been? How you've had to kind of, take some of your training outside in the last little while?
Usually, actually, most of my training has been done outside. So it's not a great change for me, but I am pretty excited that there's a lot of snow falling right now, because obviously as an athlete, like that opens up opportunities for just different kinds of training. So instead of just running, now I can run or cross country ski or ski-mo, which is like where you ski up the mountain and then you take your skins off and you downhill ski down the mountain, which is a really fun way to get a really good workout in.
I guess. Very cool. Very cool. Well, and so there's not many there weren't as many races this year because of what was happening around the world. So the Spartan Games was one thing that you kind of jumped into. How was that after? There was probably a chunk of time where you just weren't able to race as much as you're used to. Was it a big thing to be able to finally go to the Spartan Games, or how was that when that started out?
Yeah, so we only found out about that event, I'd say it was about 3 weeks before the event happened. And I just felt primarily really lucky to be able to do any event at all, because all year long, basically, I'd been training as I would for any other year, and we'd have sort of events on the schedule, and then they'd be canceled about a month to 2 weeks before the event happened. So all year long, it was sort of this limbo of like training and trying to peak to perform at my best, and then having the race be canceled. So it sort of just became like training for life, I guess, or like whenever we were gonna get to be able to race again. And so my fitness was good, and I just felt really lucky to be able to utilize it in some way.
Yeah. Well, and arriving there, did you have a pretty good idea of what it was going to look like, or was it was a lot of it a surprise? Were the people there a surprise? How did that work for you?
Everything about it was very much a surprise. So not only the event itself, but basically the Spartan Games. So it wasn't your typical Spartan race. It was this all-encompassing event. It was 4 days long. Yeah. And over the 4 days, we had, I think it was 10 events. So we had 3 or 2 events every single day. And that included like mountain biking and swimming. And there was like a trail marathon. Also, and lots of heavy lifting type events, like all these different sort of things. And beforehand, Spartan didn't tell us actually what we were going to be doing. I think we knew what maybe half of the events were going to be. Like we knew we were going to have to mountain bike. Yeah. And we knew that there was going to be a swim, but like we didn't know how long that they were going to be. And then the other half of the events were sort of just a big surprise for everybody. So yeah, that was like really fun and challenging to train for. The training basically involved us sort of doing a morning session, and then we'd like recover. Yeah. And then an afternoon session, it was basically training our bodies to like fire again multiple times in a day and to recover as best you can in between, and practice what nutrition works best for you. Yeah. And then just like the training was really fun because it involved all sorts of like cross training. Yeah. Basically anything that you did for training counted. And the competition was a surprise because we actually had no idea who was going to be there. And I thought that it was going to be a lot of familiar faces from the obstacle course racing world for me, and more endurance-based athletes. But I showed up, and there was actually like all these different athletes from all kinds of different sports. We had a professional marathon runner. There was the CrossFit World Champion. Yep. I think she won in 2013. Yeah. And she's like this huge name that I guess everybody in the CrossFit world like idolizes her. And I had no idea beforehand who she was, but now I feel lucky at the time actually that I didn't know who she was, or maybe I would have been a little like
more intimidated. Yeah.
Instead, I just got to know her like a friend, and then I learned after the fact via listening to various podcasts and things that like she's this big person name that people idolize.
Was that weird for you when you got there and realized, because watching the show when you go through it, is there were a lot of events that were some heavy lifting events, and comparatively, I mean, you're a smaller athlete than some of those. I think of like we had Faith Cook on a while ago, and she even said, I couldn't believe when I went to do wrestling, it was like, okay, just reality, I'm just a whole lot larger than a lot of the women I had to wrestle. Like she was saying that. Was it intimidating for you, or was it, how did you take that when you'd see an event was very heavy lifting?
Yeah, it was a bit intimidating, but you know what, like I feel like I got the sort of like the lucky end of the stick there, because for athletes like Faith or people who are used to more lifting, they had to go do, I think the
Yeah.
mountain bike event was 6 hours long, and they had to run a trail marathon. And like for them, those, I mean, everybody was doing things that were out of their element, but they were
Mhm.
doing things that were like not only out of their element, but like for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, okay, will I be able to lift this? Yes,
Yeah.
no,
Yes,
okay,
no,
do
okay,
my
I
best
can,
and
yeah.
continue merrily. Yeah, but how much fun is Faith though? She's such a
Oh,
personality.
she was hilarious, and it
Yeah,
was funny because she said the same thing when she thought the bike was the hardest thing for her,
yeah.
and she talked about how when she fell off the bike that she had to talk to herself constantly because it just felt like it was forever to get through that
Mhm.
event for her, which because it just isn't her wheelhouse the same way as it would be for say somebody like you. So
But the competitors were so positive. Like she was such a positive force, because like most of the events would have been kind of out of her wheelhouse, and
yeah.
she just like, I don't know. They actually aired part of that in one of the episodes. Like I guess they strapped a GoPro onto her
Yeah.
bike, and there's actually footage of her falling, and like she's not even swearing or
No.
cursing or anything. Like so many people would be disheartened and angry, and she just like got back up. You can hear her talking to herself, and
Yeah.
it's all just like positivity. And so many of the athletes at this event were like that. Like it was really inspiring to be around. And every time you kind of got to something that you was way out of your comfort zone, you'd be like, okay, well, like if they could do the mountain bike and the trail marathon, then like I can suffer through trying to lift this like 165-pound deadlift or
Yeah.
something.
Well, and so was that what the dynamic was like the whole time? Because you're all very competitive. Obviously, you wouldn't be at the level you are in all of your sports if you weren't competitive. And like
Mhm.
you have this reputation. Everybody says, "Oh, you know, Lindsay's the nicest person you'll ever meet." And but you also see that you're competitive. I mean, you have to be. So are you are you different when you're in race than you are outside of that, or are you just more focused? Like how does that work for you?
Yeah, I would say that I'm just more focused. But we all got along super well. Like we're definitely
Yeah.
all there to compete, but I kind of describe that as an event as like summer camp for athletic adults.
Yeah.
Like if I could pick a summer camp as an adult, it literally would be exactly that, minus probably like a little less exercise per day.
Yeah.
It was extreme. But yeah, like everybody was just
But everybody
really
was cool
fun,
that way.
really nice, really positive. We all got along famously, and like we all slept in the same kind of, there was a girls dormitory and a boys dormitory, so it literally felt like summer
Like
camp.
summer camp.
We eat in the
That's
dining
cool.
hall, you know.
So if they do it again, is there somebody that you think, wow, I would love to arrive and this person be there at the same time that maybe wasn't
It's
there this time?
definitely, you know, everybody, like everybody who was there, I would love to meet and hang out with again. They had a couple of the guys were really positive and really cool to be around too. They had a professional NFL player named
Okay.
Kurt Magid,
Yep.
and he was like, so he's in the episodes a lot. He was just like a really positive, cool guy. Yeah, Jared Shoemaker, who's the World Championship Xterra, or sorry, I'm thinking of Josiah
Yeah.
McDowell, and
Madonna.
he's like
Yeah.
the world champion in Xterra. And then Jared Shoemaker is an Olympic triathlete. Like all these people were there, and it was just like really inspiring to, at the beginning when they introduced us all, like hear all these names listed off, and
Yeah.
and then they say like Lindsay Webster, like OCR world champion, and everybody's like, what's OCR? So,
But I'm
yeah.
sure that's changed now. Like that's one thing is this also probably also helps change the profile of all of those things because there are a number of athletes that, you know, a different genre wouldn't have known. It is kind of cool to be able to have this variety together.
Yeah, I really enjoyed to bring sort of a good rep to obstacle racing, because I think a lot of people hear like, oh, obstacle racing, and they know it as like a weekend warrior sort of thing that you
Yeah.
do with your work team and stuff, which is like, that was my first obstacle races,
Yeah.
was just like with my work team, and we did it together on the weekend. But yeah, like it's really cool to have Ryan and my husband and I both won the event
Yeah.
as respective males and females. And I thought it was really cool just to like solidify the fact that the world will recognize OCR athletes more as like really legitimate
Absolutely.
athletes and pair it up against all these other athletes in different realms that the world, I guess, is more familiar with.
Yeah, yeah, it gives that kind of functional fitness piece a different look than it might have before,
Mhm.
because people automatically thought, CrossFit, because it's, promoted a whole lot right now, or has been. So it's kind of cool that you're on that. Well, one of the things that I noticed there, but I've also, when I alluded to it before, is that I think in Lake Tahoe, you finished on, and was it a broken foot, or was it sprained foot, or what happened there? And I
Oh,
noticed even,
yeah. So I actually got a stress fracture in
yeah.
my right foot. Was it my right foot or my left foot? See, now I don't even remember. I think it
Don't
was
even
my left
know.
foot that had the
Yeah.
stress fracture. And that happened about 4 weeks before that race. So
Wow.
mentally for me, that was like a really challenging time. I've been lucky enough to be a professional athlete 5 years now, and I've never actually had a serious injury.
Ah.
So I was sort of like, you know what? Every athlete takes their turn with this. Like now it's my turn, but the timing is really bad. Like this could have happened at any other time of the season, not right before the race that we spend all year
Yeah.
preparing for. Like that's the big one. So the timing wasn't great, but I learned a lot from the experience, definitely. And I got to the point where I was able to race. I was cleared by my physio and doctor, and they
Yeah.
said, like, not fully healed, but like you're not gonna fully break the bone if you run on this thing right now. And anyway, but it was a really big mental game to race on a foot that isn't
Yeah.
isn't there. And coming into an event, like normally I would do a lot of running to prepare for that event, but I'd been doing all my training on a bike mostly.
Yeah.
And some stairmaster was like the closest
Yeah.
thing that I could get to running. So just, yeah, so mentally during the race that was a big challenge. And then I think I was about 2/3 of the way through the race. I came off an obstacle and I landed funny. Like I landed on basically the scaffolding that holds the obstacle up, and I
Yep.
really badly sprained my other ankle.
Oh, it was the other one. I didn't
It was
realize
the
that.
other one, yeah. So now I'm like hobbling along, and I've never had a sprained ankle before, actually. So I
Yeah.
I didn't really realize how bad it was, and so I like went on to finish the race. And the race was in September, at the end of September, and it took till December for the swelling in my ankle to go
Yeah,
away.
because it can swell right up right away too. So,
Yeah, and for me to
wow.
get like my mobility back and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like a wild thing to have happened, but it
Is
also
there
shows like the
anything?
power of the mind when when you
Yeah.
really want something and you're have
Well,
adrenaline.
and is there anything you do, and maybe because some people have a very specific kind of mental performance kind of way of approaching things. Do you have anything specifically that you deal with that's outside of your normal training, or like how do you incorporate that, or do you?
You mean, sorry, from a mental perspective? Like,
Well, like some people will like that, whether they've got kind of visualization or meditation or any of those kind of things, or how do you get that kind of resilience muscle that you obviously have? Like, what do you do specifically from a mental standpoint?
I think the resilience is, I don't know, I was born with that. That's
You just
just
push through it.
extreme competitiveness, probably. But I do a fair bit of meditation, and I love to do yoga. I use it as basically mobility practice for me as an athlete. But yeah, I'm not like a good sleeper, which is a struggle sometimes as an athlete, because a lot of your recovery happens while you're sleeping, and a lot of nights I'll wake up like in the middle of the night, my body just like, it's like a light switches on and I'm like bing,
Really?
wide awake. So yeah, I do a lot of mindfulness and yeah, visualization and stuff, and that not only helps me sleep, but like it just um yeah, it's surprising how much it can sort of just like calm your mind, calm your body, and what a
Yeah.
difference it can end up making in your daily life, and helps me focus when
Yep.
I'm nervous before a race. And
And how much from I know nutrition is probably a really loaded question for you because it's different than a lot of athletes would be, because it depends on, I guess, what you're preparing for. But do you have, like, there are some people that are really kind of heavy into, some are vegan, some are kind of, really watch their macros and all that kind of stuff. How
Yeah.
do you approach nutrition yourself?
Um, I have a really relaxed view on nutrition. Like
Yeah,
I actually love baking and cooking, huge hobby of mine. So like a lot of our foods are homemade. Like we eat tons of fruits and vegetables. All the bread I usually eat is homemade, but I'm not like gluten free.
yeah,
I'm vegan. I've tried sort of cutting these things out, including dairy and stuff, and just to see how it would affect my body. And I didn't notice any positive changes with most of them. I did notice like various negative changes. Like
yeah,
I tried for a couple months once to be a vegetarian, and I was like really focusing hard on not succumbing to any like iron deficiency or protein deficiency. And
yeah,
I definitely ended up with a lot less energy and like pretty iron deficient. It's hard as an athlete, especially as a female athlete,
yeah,
to get enough iron. And iron, like I guess running as well, has a tendency to actually like break down your red blood cells, I think it is. So
yeah,
so you need like additional iron to compensate for that, especially if you're a female athlete who is a runner.
yeah,
um, yeah, so I know some athletes can do it. I think it really depends a lot on your body, but for me, I'm like, you know what, like none of these things seem to bug my body, so like I'm not going to cut them out if I don't have to. And we eat dessert most nights, but in
yeah. Hey,
moderation. I
yeah,
find that like I know there's pro athletes out there who have done well in their sports as being a vegan or something like that,
yeah,
but like most people who you see at the top of their sport,
yeah,
like have pretty well-rounded diets.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
and you're also burning, like, what you would burn in a day is different than the average listener would, I'm sure, because of how much training you do. But you're right, like that. I think most people you talk to, it is just kind of, doing things within reason, like, which is a
Mhm.
pretty normal way of looking at it. Um,
Definitely.
so we already said before that you and Ryan are married. How you both must be extremely competitive people, because you're at the top of your game on both sides, female and male. Is that something, like, when you train, do you train together? Do you have very different ways of approaching that? And how do you kind of balance that when the two of you live together at the same time?
Yeah, the thing is, we're not really competitive with each other.
Yeah,
We are probably, I would say, like each other's support systems. Like if I have questions about my training or something, or like if I'm worried about something, then he's kind of my sounding board, and like I'll run things by him so that I can get clarity from him. But yeah, I wouldn't say we're necessarily competitive with each other. We train together as much as we can.
yeah,
But obviously like he has more muscle than I do. He's faster.
yeah,
So like for example, if we're doing hill intervals, like we'll do them at the same time but not at the same speed,
yeah.
so at least we can cheer each other on when we pass each other. And it's fun to like see somebody else out there suffering with you. But we're both have an easy day plan. Like yesterday we went and did skimo at the mountain together all day long.
Yeah,
um, so, and we can chat through that because it's just an easy workout. Or some days
yeah,
if
yeah,
I have like a tempo run planned, that's where I'll be running like a medium speed,
yeah.
and for him that's his easy speed, so like it works
So
out
you
well
just kind of work
for
them
us.
out. Yeah. Oh, very
Yeah.
cool.
It's funny actually, through COVID this past year, just to see how we both dealt with it differently. Like we're both very competitive people, but I am motivated a lot through, I guess, my competition and seeing, what they're doing and stuff. And if I see that
Yeah.
they're doing something for training, I'm like, oh, maybe I should incorporate that too. And he's totally opposite. He's like, oh, why do you do that? Like, you're just going to do your best on any given day. But he is just motivated a lot by being as fit as he possibly can. And like, he just loves to race. Whereas me, sometimes I get like burnt out of all the racing. So he struggled a lot last year.
Yeah.
and I have like I'm more of a homebody, and I have a lot of hobbies and stuff that made it a lot easier for me. So like, so
He's
a
going
lot of
stir crazy, and yeah,
yeah, and so I was sort of like his shoulder to lean on during that time, and I got him into like a few hobbies. But then when we're in the race season, when I'm starting to burn out, like he's my shoulder to
yeah,
lean on. So it's kind of, I don't know, like, yeah, we're both very competitive, but I think we work well together.
yeah,
So yeah, we're lucky to have
yeah.
found each other.
That's very cool. And you're both professional athletes, so that's actually cool that your sport has been able to do that a lot more, recently. Do you see a lot of change happening that way, especially for, and I'll say especially for women athletes? Do you see there being more opportunity to be more, to make your living off of doing your sport? Do you see opportunities happening there?
Yes, definitely. When I first came into the sport, I think everybody who was sort of at the top of the podium at the time had a full-time job. You
Yeah.
would see the name Amelia Boone a lot. She was one of
Mhm.
the top female athletes, and she's actually a lawyer.
Yeah.
So she worked full-time, and eventually um, yeah, she kind of like retired and stepped away from the sport. I think it was just like a lot for her to juggle between trying to work, and she wasn't willing to give up her job. But like, as sponsorship opportunities came in and made it possible for the top athletes to make it like their full-time job,
Yeah.
then it became a lot more normal for like those on top of the podium to be their full-time job. Like I think it caught a lot of us at a good age too, where we were in between university or college and
Yeah.
really like solidifying our careers.
Yeah.
Whereas like for Amelia, she'd already solidified her career and wasn't really
Right.
willing to step away from it. Whereas like a lot of others of us, we're just like, oh, it's a good time.
Yeah.
So
Why
sure, I'll
not?
give it
Right.
back for a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Now, do you come from, like, when you started this, you said that some of it was in your, you started doing it the same way as some people where we're doing it on weekends and things like that. But do you come from, like, what kind of sports did you do when you were younger? Did you come from a very, like a athletic family? How did that work for you growing into the sport?
I did actually. Yeah. I grew up, I guess, figure skating, and then I got really into cross country skiing
Hmm.
in high school. My sister introduced me to it, and she actually ended up being a two-time Olympian
Hmm.
in the sport of cross country skiing. So she was like a huge influence for me in terms of seeing the dedication that it took to being a full-time athlete. Like our school bus would come at 6:30 in the morning, and she would wake up at 5 every morning
Oh,
so that she could fit a run in before grabbing the school bus, and then she'd run on her lunch hours. And she ended
wow.
up getting a track scholarship, but like she wanted to pursue skiing. And anyway, so we both were like really competitive in skiing together. I sort of made the decision that I wanted to be like a normal kid for a little while, and then I went off to university, and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to go the sort of like the more career route, and just like be a normal kid, step away from sports for a few years, and figure out if it's whether or not I actually like want to do competitive sports, or it's something I've just always done.
Yep.
And so I sort of was just like, I'm going to go have fun for a while and like focus on my future, my career future, not my athletic future.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just, I don't know, gradually got back into sports just because I love doing them. I love being outside. I love activity, and
Yeah.
ended up eventually just like the competitive drive found me again, and got back into it after I think it was probably like 4 or 5 years before I really started being competitive with it again. So yeah, it was a good hiatus.
Well, and so where do you see, I mean, I know it's kind of hard right now because we're still kind of, everybody's still feeling their way through this stuff in the next little while, but what kind of, what do you see wanting to accomplish over the next little while in your sport? I mean, you've got, we were talking before you came on, it's hard to even look at your list of things that you've accomplished already and figure out what do you want to highlight, because you've got so many things that you've done, which is great. So what is next for you? So
Your intro made me feel pretty great about myself. I was like, oh, well, if you say it that way, it makes me
No, it
feel
is pretty
amazing.
awesome. And I think that's what people got a glimpse of when they saw the Spartan Games, to be honest, is that there are a lot of people that wouldn't have known of that resume that you have, and the fact that you did do as well as you did against all of these other athletes, that there may have been a couple of them that because of their sport they have this higher profile, but now
Mhm.
hopefully that profile is catching up for you because your accomplishments are pretty huge so far. So where do you see that going in the next while?
Yeah, in obstacle racing, I've like gradually over the years ticked off most of my main goals.
Yeah.
I still have like a couple left that I'd like to tick off. But I also really love mountain running and sky
Yeah.
running. Most people probably aren't familiar
What
with
is,
the
yeah.
term sky running. Yeah,
Yeah. What is sky running?
it's really big overseas and especially in Europe.
Yeah.
So basically it's mountain running, like you run up a big mountain, you're running along mountain ridges and
Yeah.
maybe down the other side and up a different mountain. I don't know, basically it's mountainous routes, but they're not afraid to shy away from making it really technical. I've
Yeah.
done a couple races and like we were running down glaciers and
Wow.
we were running along these rocky ridges where you like had to hold a rope along the way. Sometimes you'll have to wear like a harness or
Wow.
you'll have to, like rope up and clip into yeah to like
That's
protect
pretty
yourself.
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but to me it appeals because it's always like a really good workout, but then you also get these stunning views and like
I bet.
you get to go all these cool places that you would never be able to get by car or even like by a bike.
Yeah.
um, so that's definitely something that I want to do more of. Last year was my whole goal in 2020 was to do the Skyrunner World Series and see kind of like how I would make out. I've only
Yeah.
done a couple sky races and overseas before. They're
Yeah.
really competitive. I finished sixth in my first one, and I was like, I really want to do more of these. And then obviously the whole year was kind of yeah, kiboshed, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and do it again this year. So that's like another
Yeah.
goal of mine.
Very cool. And so different things, like that's the one thing, if people are listening, I mean, they may think, they may be taking inspiration away from this, but maybe thinking, wow, I'm nowhere near that. So maybe kind of thinking of, there's probably people listening that are just thinking, how do I start to take some of that, the part of the fun and the things that are just really cool about being part of a sport like that.
Mhm.
If you were to say that there were kind of two or three things that people could do just to start to integrate, whether it's fun or outdoors, into what they do in training. A lot of people just train indoors, train in their basement right now, and
Yeah.
think, how do you get outside? How do you do some of those things? Are there a couple things that you would recommend they do kind of right away to get themselves into that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like longevity. You want to find things that you enjoy, and if you really enjoy them, you're going to make it part of your lifestyle. And so for some people, like a lot of people really enjoy being in the gym, and that's where they love to get their main source of exercise. For me, it's outside. Like I really don't like being in a gym.
Yeah.
So I would say for you, whoever you are, like find what you enjoy doing and just sort of like fit it into your lifestyle whenever you can. Half an hour a day. I don't know, it's hard right now because like normally my other suggestion would be find a community to do these things with. Like we
Yeah.
have like a little outdoor group here that we like to get together with and train with. Obviously that's difficult right now, but
But down the
yeah,
road, it might hopefully won't be that far away, that maybe that is a secondary thing too, is how do you start to connect with
yeah,
people that way?
definitely. For me, what got me through this past year was definitely having hobbies and like for training itself. Since the community's sort of taken away, just having like multiple different activity outlets that I know how to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe like try cycling if you haven't cycled before. Like gravel riding is a really new big thing where you can get sort of on like the more back roads. If you're worried about cars, it's a lot quieter.
Yeah.
They're often really pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the winter I cross country ski, or you could get yourself a set of snowshoes. Like just having different options for ways that you can find half an hour in your day
Yeah.
to sort of like get outside and press the reset button.
And yeah, and they're all things that you can do right now, even if you are kind of in that, whether it's a lockdown or quarantine or just even, things are a little quieter, then you can still do those things outside, which is, you can kind of might find you revisit something you forgot you loved too. So at the same time.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to like invest in the gear. Like if it's gonna, I don't know, like some outdoor sporting equipment is expensive, but like I don't know, I think that if you invest in the gear, spend the money and you really enjoy it, then like you can't really put a price on that. And then if you don't find you enjoy it, then it's like a massive thing right now, even just to try and find outdoor gear. So like there's a lot of stuff for sale that people have bought and found that they don't like or they're not using, and they're reselling it, which like if you find that you don't like it, then just resell it, and like you're not going to lose a whole bunch of money on it. But there's definitely going to be somebody out there right now who's going to buy it.
Yeah, because there's limited supply. I know we were looking at fat bikes the other day, and there are very few of them around. But you're right. If you did get one and you didn't enjoy it, you could definitely find someone else who wants it at this time.
Exactly.
Too.
I just bought a new bike off a guy all the way in Vancouver, and he shipped it to me. So.
No way. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's not like, I don't know, they maybe like aren't in the same province, but if they're in the same country, it's not really an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you very much for this, Lindsay. If people are trying to follow what you do and connect with you, how are some of the best ways of being able to do that?
I would say probably Instagram is the best way to find me. I'm not a big social media user, but like I do like Instagram, and that's my main outlet. So cool. On Instagram, I'm Lindsay Dawn Webster. Lindsay spelled with an AY.
Yes. Yeah. And what we'll do as well, so that everybody knows, is we'll put the link in the show notes so that way you can see that as well. It's a nice, quick, easy way to get there. If you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, make sure you do that. We have great guests every week, and make sure if you listen to this, drop a review so that you can let us know what you thought about today's episode. But again, thank you for taking the time. I know it's a nice day, and I know you were cold earlier, so you can head back downstairs and in front of the fireplace to warm up too, Lindsay. So
I'm cozy now.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. We really appreciated it.
Yeah, today. My pleasure. And thanks to everybody who listened.
All right. Okay. And we'll talk to everybody again on Big Idea, Big Moves.